Hey everybody, welcome to the University of You. So this is where I take practices that I learned from many teachers and share them with you. And last week we talked about awareness, and today we're going to talk about awareness, but to differentiate it between hypervigilance. And then I'm also going to go over how to feel your feelings and the sensations that we feel in our bodies and how we can use them to help us be fully engaged and not live in fear. So this is going to be, as I said last week, a year of self-knowledge. We're going to create a design for our lives based on the information we learn about ourselves as we notice, observe, and write and do exercises throughout the year. So last week we talked about awareness, and I taught you about the watcher and how the watcher is the part of us that has kind of been there all along. I think of it as the sky. So the watcher is the sky, and the sky is always there, and in actuality above the clouds in the daytime the sky is always blue. I remember the first time I ever flew in an airplane, and you go above the clouds and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is what's happening, when down below it is just totally covered in clouds and you can't see a bit of the sun. So that's kind of what our mind is. And our thoughts are the clouds, and the clouds come and they go, but they don't really impact the blue sky. So it's kind of like remembering that the watcher is the sky and the thoughts are the clouds. And the clouds will always change. It's always a shifting environment. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today also was the difference between awareness and hypervigilance. Now, I've been in several 12-step programs, and many people who have addictive personalities come from a family that there was a reason to be hypervigilant. Sometimes there was trauma, sometimes there was erratic emotions, alcoholism, people being put in jail. So there was lots of reasons for children, as children, to be really very, very aware of the environment. If a person, let's say if your parent was alcoholic and they came home, you had to test the waters, you had to feel, listen to every sound, different tonality in their voice, how they moved, whether things were going to be okay or whether they weren't going to be okay. For me, although my mother was loving, she was very erratic in her emotions. So the question was she going to be disengaged? Was she going to be angry? Was she going to be loving? And so I was very hypervigilant about how I was going to behave based on what I could perceive as what was going to happen in the home. Also, was my uncle going to be sitting next to me? Did I have to be prepared for abuse that was going to happen? So there's a real hypervigilance that happens for people growing up in homes where there's not a lot of consistency. But that's not what I'm talking about. Hypervigilance is almost like an obsessive compulsion of looking at of looking outside. So you're constantly scanning how are people reacting, how are they feeling, what's that look in their eye, again, the tone in their voice. And so what happens is we become very externally focused, and it's a survival technique, and it makes absolute sense and that we would behave that way. I mean, it is exactly what was required at the time, but it doesn't necessarily serve us as we leave those erratic situations and create our own homes and our own lives. So hypervigilance is not what I'm talking about in terms of awareness. And an example that I give is that whenever I feel like I'm looking externally for something, I really want to turn around and look at what is happening for me inside. It's almost like I do this, I start to blame somebody, the finger gets pointed, and I have to take that finger and I have to point it back at myself. And when I point it back at myself, when I start to look at what is it that I'm thinking, what is it that I'm doing, then I have some control over the situation, and I can actually determine the future and how I want to react to it. I have an example from Thanksgiving. You know, one of the things we talked about last week was let's take Thanksgiving as an opportunity to observe our interactions with people, what we were thinking about, and what we were feeling. So there was a time in Thanksgiving when I had lots of family and friends around, and a very good friend was leaving. We're standing in front of the refrigerator having this conversation, and all of a sudden he says to me, "Why are you shouting? Calm down. Like, what's the big deal?" And I thought to myself, "What are you talking about? I'm not shouting." Okay, so I remembered I'm supposed to notice what I'm feeling, notice what I'm thinking. So right away I thought, okay, if he's telling me I'm yelling, I'm probably yelling. Was there a boundary that was crossed here? Well, I didn't set any boundaries, so there were no boundaries to be crossed. So what actually was going on? And so I was able to just turn my focus around, stop blaming the other person for being a jerk, and notice that I was pretty much being a jerk too. So that I didn't stop me from yelling, but I was able to learn from that situation by noticing and by recognizing what was going on for me. So every time I have a difficult emotion, I really want to look at what is happening for me, because I'm the one that can control myself. I cannot control anything else. So the other thing I want to teach you today is about sensations. So what is an emotion? An emotion is a sensation that we feel in our bodies. It generally is in response to an unconscious thought or a conscious thought or something that happens in the environment. We react in a certain way. So one of the things, the tools of awareness, is to actually notice and name your emotions. We have lots of fear around our emotions. Emotions are the reasons we avoid doing things. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to be scared. I know for me, I really don't like scary movies. I do not like the sensation of being afraid. So what exactly is the sensation? So if you can think about your own self in a situation, let's take anger. So for me, when I get angry, I notice that, oh my God, my eyes get super focused because I just want to, I think I have like that X-ray vision from Superman, and I can just burn you out from the way I'm looking at you. So my eyes get very focused. My throat tenses up, my upper body all gets tense, and just my whole face is kind of concentrated. And this is for me what is the sensations of anger. And if I relax that and say, what about the sensations of, say, shame? I had lots of shame growing up. Most people who are survivors of child sexual abuse do. And so for me, shame is more like a collapsing in. I don't want you to look at me. I don't want to participate. I'm getting smaller. Again, I've got a lot of tension in my throat. I feel a warmth that just kind of starts at the top of my head and just kind of get a flush from heat. And again, the heart is beating really fast. Okay, let's take one positive emotion. So let's say excitement. So if I'm excited, I feel like my face opens up, my smile becomes very active, I'm activated, my heart kind of beats in anticipation. I feel like, wow, this is going to be great, something good is going to happen. My shoulders get all up and activated, and I'm just kind of ready to dance and to move. So when I can feel my emotions and when I can name my emotion, I can then, in the time that it occurs, think about what it is that I'm thinking about. So once I name my emotions and I'm feeling them, then I can look at what is it that I'm thinking. What are the thoughts that are driving this emotion? They could be unconscious. They could be difficult to get at. But the more you can feel it, once you start to feel it in your body and consciously feel it, you can then have more connection to the thoughts, and then we can examine the thoughts. So what I'd like you to do, I also want to talk about the 90-second rule that was discussed by Jill Bolte Taylor, who was a doctor who had a stroke. And so she explained that an emotion is a reaction we have to something in the environment, and there's a chemical reaction in our bodies that happen for 90 seconds. And then once that is over, the 90 seconds, and they flush out of our body, and then our bodies are more relaxed. But when we take our mind and we take a thought and we spin it and we repeat it over and over again, then the emotion stays in our body. So we have some control over our emotions, at least to observe them and notice them and to look at the power they have over us through the way we think about it. And then we can learn to exist with our emotions, be able to feel them without thinking the world is coming to an end. And as a child of abuse, when you feel those emotions so strongly as a child, you really do think the world is going to come to an end. You're going to die. Somebody's going to die. So this is a skill that needs to be learned, how to feel your emotions and to be able to kind of exist with them with the knowledge that they are not going to destroy you. So for your homework for this week, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write about your 3 top emotions. Like, what are the emotions you have most days? And then to write about them. What do they feel in your body? What are the sensations? You kind of do a body scan. Start at the bottom of your feet and move up through your body, your upper body, your shoulders, your head, and identify what exactly is happening for you during those emotions. The other thing I want to say is that if you are interested in having these exercises, I'm happy to walk you through them, but just on the phone, the 2 of us, in a free 30-minute call that we can have. So if you're interested in taking advantage of working with me on one of these emotions or on one of the situations that create emotions, where we can look at your thoughts, we can look at, are you becoming the watcher? Are you developing that skill? Is the skill of awareness being broadened in your life? I'm happy to do that on the phone. Just let me know in the comments below and I'll send you a link to my calendar. So November is melting away and December is here tomorrow. So in December, we're going to talk about connecting to ourselves, getting still, even in the madness of the holidays, finding a place of stillness and keeping promises to ourselves. So don't forget, put a note below and we can schedule a mini session for 30 minutes complimentary. I'll message you my link and I'll see you next week. All right. Bye-bye.